What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. The road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams this summer is now taking us into Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We are wrapping up with the Power Four teams, and one of the final ones on my list was the Wake Forest Demon Deacons out of the Atlantic Coast Conference. My name is Nate Pope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate, and I want to thank all of you for clicking on this video and for helping to support the channel. If you would like to support the channel even further, then please do what it says below me. Hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, you might as well ring the bell. Turning on notifications during prediction season ensures that you won't miss a single video, especially not one of your favorite team. And I am a sports media graduate delving into the professional world of the industry. And if you would like to see all the cool stuff I get to do while still being up to date on what goes on this very YouTube channel, then you can give me a follow on social media, Twitter or X, whatever you prefer to call the platform, and Instagram. The handle's right down below me at tailgate829, and you can even feel free to email me. It's tailgate829 at gmail.com. I want to thank you all for supporting and interacting with me and the channel in whatever way you may be doing so. And now, with all of that said and done and out of the way, let us begin by talking about the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, who have a new head coach in town. Dave Clawson stepped down and may very well have been asked to leave, but as far as we know, stepped down from the program and entered former Washington State head coach Jake Dickert. This was one of the more fascinating hires to me because I really liked the program that Jake Dickert built over there in Pullman at Washington State, and now he is traveling across the country to be the head man here for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, who Dave Clawson at one point did have towards the top of the ACC. They were playing for a conference title. Jake Dickert built a hell of a program over in Pullman. We'll see if he can build that here in Winston-Salem. How do we do preview predictions here on the channel this year? Well, we are going to go through a roster overview where the offense is over here to the left and the defense is over here to the right. And at the end of the video, we're going to go through the Wake Forest Demon Deacon football schedule. I will give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. And overall, this video is here to tell you what I think about the Deeks here in 2025. Before we do get started, bam, right down below me, returning production numbers. They're according to ESPN, factoring in transfer portal additions up to a certain percentage. And then even right below that, recruiting and transfer portal ranks for the class of 2025 are both according to 24/7 Sports. Move over here to the left-hand side of the screen where Rob Ezel is your offensive coordinator. And when you take a look at the quarterback position, this season, they are going to be getting a new lead man at what some people may consider the most important position on the field. Hank Bachmeier, former Boise State Bronco, also I believe formerly of the Stanford Cardinal. How about that? Landed here at Wake Forest and got back into the starting role. 2,593 yards, had 16 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Was also the team's third leading rusher, although didn't run that much. Was only one of three players, however, to gain over 100 yards on the ground. He is off to bigger things than football and the new quarterback room this year, because you also are going to be losing Michael Kern, who threw 45 passes for you last season. He is no longer on the team. You do get some transfers coming in. Deshaun Purdy is a true sophomore. A couple of freshmen enter the room, but I'm going to go with a guy that has seen a ton of college football, who's going to be that next starter for you. It is going to be Robbie Ashford. Robbie Ashford is coming over last year from South Carolina, but did play at Auburn and was also an Oregon Duck there as well. So he's really been all over the country. This is now his third different conference and fourth different program. Last season, 324 yards and a pair of touchdowns. He never really has found a full stride as a starting quarterback, but has played some good backup roles over the past couple of seasons. And I think, again, if he can seemingly find a rhythm to improve himself, I do think he can prove to be a pretty solid starting quarterback. I don't know if Robbie Ashford is ever going to do anything crazy, but I do think Robbie Ashford can provide, at the very least, some good experience and stability at an all new quarterback room this season. However, you do have some stability in the backfield, and a guy that I think is being criminally underrated by a ton of metrics and a ton of national people out there, but Damon Claiborne is probably going to be one of the best returning running backs the country has to offer. Listen to what he did at Wake Forest last year: 1,049 yards, 4.6 touchdowns, or sorry, 4.6 yards per carry, and 11 touchdowns. Got a little ahead of myself in reading his stat line. Claiborne is an absolutely phenomenal back, and I love watching him run. You get a chance to watch a Wake Forest game, watch out for number one in the backfield. I do like Damon Claiborne a lot, and he does have his second leading rusher last season returning behind him. That's going to be a guy by the name of Tate Carney, the sophomore last year, rushed for 339 yards and 6 touchdowns. Well, again, a pretty respectable 4.1 yards per carry. I think they make for a nice 1-2 punch in the running back room. And again, I think Claiborne is a criminally underrated back in the country. I think he could prove to be one of the best and is going to lead what I think, for the most part, is going to be a pretty solid rushing attack for the Deacs this season. However, the trouble comes in the pass catching room. Your top four wide receivers all leave. The lead one of that in Taylor Morin is off to Philly, while the other three have gone and entered the transfer portal. Horatio Fields is now with Auburn. Deuce Alexander is now with Ole Miss, both four-star transfers. And then Donovan Green is over with an ACC opponent in Virginia Tech as a three-star transfer. So, again, you lose your main man to the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL, not a problem there. But when your next top three guys all enter the transfer portal, that leaves you with some pretty big shoes to fill. A youngster in Micah Mays is going to be coming back, and probably will see some pretty good playing time. But other than that, you have a ton of transfers in here. And I mean, take your pick as to who is going to be the lead guys. According to ourlads.com, it's going to be Sterling Burkhalter, who is coming over from Cincinnati, had nearly 200 yards and a touchdown on 11 catches last season. Karate Brenson is coming over from Tennessee State, is formerly of Ball State, so has seen the FBS level before, but was pretty darn good with Tennessee State last year. You also do have some other guys like Carlos Hernandez, who's coming over with Jake Dickert from Washington State, Sawyer Roncanelli, hopefully I pronounced that last name right, Chris Barnes, Reginald Vick, and so many other names that are going to be coming back and entering this room as well. Mainly built off of the transfer portal, we'll see what portal pieces fit in and who emerges out of this portal class. In the tight end room, you also do get some consistency here. Your lead tight end in Harry Lodge is going to be coming back as a redshirt junior, but you do have a transfer coming in Enyi Falayi, who is coming over from Utah Tech, is formerly of UMass, and projects, according to ourlads.com, to be that lead tight end. And I do believe that he's got the talent to be able to do so. I think he is going to take that lead tight end position this year. And I do really like him at the tight end position. To pair with Harry Lodge, I think it's a fairly nice 1-2 combo in the tight end position. On the offensive line, you got not one but two starting roles that are going to be open, but you get the sense that the competition field is open for most of these offensive line spots. George Sell probably going to lock down that right guard position as a returner, but other than that, you're going to have transfers vying for spots up and down this offensive line, as well as the returners that come back are going to be trying to fight for their starting jobs to keep their position. And I think the center one, a very key one, as usual, on many offensive lines, but especially for Wake Forest this season. So you take a look at the offensive room as a whole. Again, not too shabby, and it can improve in a ton of ways from last season to a Wake Forest team that really, for the most part, struggled last year. But Claiborne is a really good back and has some solid pieces behind him. I do think you probably overall see a downgrade in this wide receiver room, probably in quarterback play as well, although Robbie Ashford is a guy that has seen a lot more power for football than Hank Bachmeier did. Again, has just never really fit in anywhere as a true starter. So we'll see if he did for one point at Auburn, but it didn't really go too pretty. So we'll see how much he has improved and can carry this offense, as well as what portal pieces fit in on both the O-line and in the pass catching group. When you're talking about the O-line this season, it is a unit that can improve. It allowed 42 sacks last year. Transfers shortly to help with that. Your defensive coordinator is Scotty Hazelton, and the defense did see some good individual performances last season. By note, you did have three guys with I think at least 3 sacks last year, and as it says right over here, 9 of the top 10 tacklers on this team last year did record at least 1 interception. But overall, this was a unit that struggled. I think it gave up over 450 passing yards per game, even though there were some good individual performances. The turnover number was not super crazy, but it was pretty solid. They did force 17 turnovers, only 20 sacks, however, and again, a bulk of that production did come from some lead guys. It wasn't like sack production was coming from everywhere. The interceptions was a very nice touch, but you are going to be losing a lot of guys that gave you interception production last season. However, when you talk about the defensive front, actually your top 4 sack leaders, every guy with at least 2+ sacks on the team last year is now exiting this program. I will read off their names in terms of how many sacks they had last year. I'll read it in order. Jasheen Davis, 5.5 sacks off the edge. You also are going to be losing Kevin Pointer, who is gone off the defensive front. He had 4 sacks last year. Bryce Ganius is also gone. And then your second leading tackler, Branson Combs, did have 2 sacks last season. And again, your second leading tackler out of the linebacker position. So again, you are losing some very, very nice pieces. And I did have to fix some absolutely awful typos over there. When you are talking about the defensive line, though, and what comes back, yes, you lose a lot of your big sack production guys. You do get some solid and, might I say, experienced pieces returning. I will butcher this last name, but the guy that provided solid production last year, and Zach Lohavachan. I definitely butchered that last name. He's a redshirt senior. BJ Williams, he's a redshirt senior, but a lot of transfers do transfer in as experienced transfers. Redshirt junior Jaden Loving, Jaden Loving's a redshirt senior, redshirt junior, and Gabe Kershke. Hopefully I said that last name right as well, along with a ton of other transfers that are either redshirt seniors or redshirt juniors. So you do bring in a lot of experienced guys that have seen a lot of football. Usually that does help out a unit. And as far as the linebacking core goes, well, you are going to be losing Branson Combs, as I said earlier, but you do still have a solid unit remain. Your next 2 tacklers in the linebacker position were Dylan Hazen and Quincy Bryant. Not in any specific order. They each are redshirt seniors, and you do have some more experienced pieces back in that room, such as Aiden Hall, who does return, and then Alec Marenko, who is a redshirt senior transfer entering this program. As far as the defensive backfield, you get an absolutely stunning return when a safety in Nick Anderson is returning to this program. Why is that stunning? Well, he is an absolutely phenomenal piece to this defense and really just exploded last season, especially in terms of tackles. 122 tackles last year, nearly doubled his previous career high back, I believe, in 2020. Yes, in 2020, because he didn't play in 2022. 2 interceptions, a pass defended, forced a fumble, recovered a fumble. It was amazing for the Steam and Deacon defense last year, but needs some other secondary members to step up. That being said, he does get some other really nice returning pieces. Devon Patterson was a very good young player that emerged for Wake Forest last year, as well as some good transfers. Ashad Williams is going to be coming over from North Alabama, and then Karen Prunty is coming over from North Carolina A&T, and originally had homes with 2 other Power 4 programs in South Carolina and Texas, as well as some other good returning pieces. Again, you need guys to step up around them, and I think overall depth of this defense needs to be challenged this season. Transfers definitely should be able to help with that. As far as your special teams room goes, Matthew Dennis is going to see his return to the kicking room, while your punting room gets young. It is going to be a young punting room this season. Couple freshmen in there, especially Rohan McNeil, who is projected to lead the punting room as a true freshman out of the 2025 recruiting class. So again, overall, when I look at this team, some really good individual performers last year. Now you're going to have to be trying to play together as a team in a brand new system. It could be a struggle of a year for Wake Forest, especially considering that as you take a look at year left and look at the Wake Forest Demon Deacon football schedule, it definitely does have some really, really daunting games. Now, what's good about it? You take a look at their ACC competition. There is no Clemson. There is no Miami. There is no Louisville. They do avoid some of the top teams in the conference, which does make this one of the more navigable schedules in ACC competition. However, there still are plenty of tricky games, and we'll dive into it here after I tell you about the numbers below me. The odds are courtesy of FanDuel, and no, not me telling you to go place your money. You should do what you want with that. You did earn it after all. Just some good context to provide, or I should say just some good context to see how good Wake Forest is supposed to be according to Vegas this year. Again, these lines are current as of recording this video. As always, are subject to change. I don't imagine the numbers around Wake Forest would change too much. I think we all know conference, national championship, even the college football playoff, way out of reach unless a lot of things can go right and Jake Dickert can get this system working like that in year one, which I don't know if that's going to happen with this program. I'll tell you right now, I don't think it will. But 4.5, that magic number to watch there, is that over-under win total. Needs to, according to the odds makers, got to pull off a couple upsets to get into the postseason. However, there will be no upset having the first couple weeks of the season from their opponents. Wake Forest should be favored in both of these games, and it will give you a pretty nice taste to what this club under Jake Dickert is going to look like. Did have to change the date on there real quick. My apologies. Kennesaw State is going to be an easy win for Wake Forest, and so will Western Carolina. These are two programs that I just don't think Wake Forest is going to have much of trouble with. Now, Kennesaw State did surprise relative to expectation. I didn't think they were going to win a single game at the FBS level. I think they won 2 or 3 and could show signs of improvement this year as a member of Conference USA, but they're not going to beat this logo behind me. Neither will Western Carolina. In fact, there might be some transfers from Western Carolina that are now playing here in Winston-Salem. So the real challenge to me starts when you get into a conference slate already. In week 3, a Thursday night game on September 11th, you have got to go play the NC State Wolfpack. Now, you get them at home, which is a really, really good sign. In fact, Wake Forest does not leave home until week 6. But even then, these two games you have at home, I think are going to be really challenging for the Demon Deacons to go win. When you look at this NC State program, sure, it did not have the season last year that a lot of people were maybe expecting out of this Wolfpack program. Not as much of a dip was expected as what they showed us last year. And the defense especially just did not have that raw intensity and power that we are used to seeing out of Dave Doran-led groups. And I know that this is a Thursday night game at home, and usually you can see some crazy things happen, especially when road teams are entering an environment that, Wake Forest, if they can pack a lot of people and get loud in there, they can make some noise here for NC State. I just think the Wolfpack are going to be pretty talented this season, and I do expect an uptick. If the record doesn't show it, I think the talent on the field definitely will. This is a North Carolina State team that I do think is going to show some signs of improvement with CJ Bailey as a true sophomore quarterback. I think he's going to expand on what he did last year, and the defense is just too experienced to not take a step forward and get back to what we usually see out of Dave Doran-led groups. Could be another roller coaster year for the Wolfpack, but I do know one thing: I think they will beat Wake Forest this upcoming season. Really early bye week here in between 2 home games, and then you get, probably in my opinion, the tougher of the 2 home games against Georgia Tech, and I think the Yellow Jackets are much too talented for this Demon Deacon team. When you look offensively, you have Haynes King, you have Jamal Haynes, you have some really good wide receiver pieces, even with the departure of Eric Singleton. You have some really good defensive pieces, highlighted by Kyle Efford at the linebacker position, and this is a very, very well-coached, disciplined team in Georgia Tech that I don't think is going to make many mistakes this year. I think Georgia Tech is going to probably lose one game that they're, quote, not supposed to, or a game where they get upset. I just don't see it being this one. I think the talent gap is too big. I do think Georgia Tech really talented. There's a reason everyone is saying they are the biggest ACC sleeper. But there is another ACC sleeper, and it's Virginia Tech. I think Virginia Tech, if they put everything together, can be a really, really nice unit. And they're going on the road, Wake Forest is, for their first road game of the season. And I don't think they're going to have much luck doing it. As we all know, Blacksburg is a tough place to play. If Kyron Drones can increase his production, he's got a lot of solid pieces around him, including a former Wake Forest wide receiver in Donovan Green. I believe I have that name correct. I might be mixing some things up. Nope, I did. I had that correct. Donovan Green, as well as some other wide receiver transfer pieces to pair with what they have coming back. Really like it, and I think the defense can fit in nicely in Blacksburg, especially in a defensive system under a defensive-minded head coach in Brent Pry. So that is a loss there for the Demon Deacons. I also think you're going to lose on the road to Oregon State. Now, I initially was flip-flopping at this game when I was at the very beginning of my process of putting together these schedules and trying to predict everyone. But the more and more I looked into this one, the more and more I'm swinging with the Oregon State Beavers. They have got some real good talent, and Malik Murphy transferring into play at the quarterback position. I like their running back room. I like their wide receiver room. Defensively, yeah, they do lose some pieces, but they get a lot of nice ones back. back, including some good transfer portal pieces. I think Oregon State overall showed you, even though it was a disappointing 5-7 campaign, they have the talent. And I think at certain positions, like the quarterback room, they got better this season. And I think the Beavers can have a pretty solid year as they await this new look Pac-12. You do get your second bye week of the year after that, but then it's bam, 6 straight games. And I don't think that this losing streak is going to get better anytime soon because you got to play SMU. And even though it's at home, the Ponies proved last year that they are one of the top teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Playing for a conference championship last year, they absolutely can go play for a conference championship again this year when Kevin Jennings comes back. And sure, a lot of the skill position rooms are going to look different. Some really good defensive talent is going to leave your unit. However, this is an SMU team that, again, schedule-wise is very favorable. I think they're very well coached by Rhett Lashley, and I still think it's one of the most talented teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and I do not think Wake Forest will be much of a match for them. On the road at Florida State, is Florida State going to have the disaster of a season that they did last year? I don't think so. Now, if they do, there are going to be some real questions that have to get asked, especially of head coach Mike Norvell, who, if there's another disastrous 2-10, 3-9, 4-8 year, maybe a year where Florida State misses the bowl game, then we could see him on his way out. And while I don't necessarily think that's the case, I know that definitely could happen. This is a game here at Florida State that I am pretty intrigued in, especially watching this Florida State team. I want to see how they play. The Tommy Castellanos, I think, is a really good quarterback, though. If he can stay in it, get his production up, I think he's going to be quite the weapon for opposing defenses this season. And when you take a look at the wide receiver room, this is what sells it for me. As great as Nick Anderson is, he needs other guys to step up around him in that secondary room. And having to defend Deuce Robinson, Squirrel White, and Gavin Blackwell, I just don't think is going to go too well for this Wake Forest secondary, especially when you have to throw in the fact that Castellanos can get on the run when he wants to. Roydell Williams and Cam Davis, as well as Gavin Sawchuk and Samuel Singleton. I just listed 4 running backs that I think can see good, solid production for the Seminoles this year, and they got some really good defensive pieces, especially in that secondary unit. I don't think Florida State's going to be as bad as they were last year. I just don't see it, and Wake Forest goes down. On the road at Virginia, okay, you want to talk about a game. Look, you've lost 6 in a row. You need to win your last 4. This is a game where Wake Forest can get kicked off in the right direction. And it seems like we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for Virginia to finally take that next step towards getting back in a bowl game, which would be their first trip under Tony Elliott. I just don't know if Tony Elliott is the right guy for the job. And while I think Virginia can show some signs of improvement this year, I like Chandler Morris at the quarterback position. We'll see. What I do know, though, is I, again, just said, I like a lot of the changes that Virginia did make. I especially love Chandler Morris at the quarterback position, as I just said, pairing him with a lot of the wide receiver pieces that the Cavaliers do have. Some really good running backs are in that room. And defensively, you bulk up on really experienced transfers. According to ourlads.com, they are expected to start 4 graduate students that are transfers and 5 overall. Guys that have seen a lot of football in a Virginia team that maybe might not make it to a bowl game, but overall will take a step in the right direction this year. North Carolina, I also think, is a loss. An in-state team. What are we going to see out of Bill Belichick at the collegiate level? I do think that is the most pressing question right now, especially because he is not coached in college ever. Does have some really good talent. I like Gio Lopez at quarterback, and I think North Carolina will be more talented than Wake Forest, but much like their in-state counterparts in NC State, could see an up and down year. Woo, 8-game losing streak. Hey, that's finally going to come to an end when you beat Delaware. You get them at home, and I do think the Blue Hens, while some really good talent is present, might take some time to adjust to the FCS level. And I did mention that Malik Murphy is now with Oregon State, which means he is gone from Duke. Apologize for the clap there. That didn't mean for that to happen. However, even though Malik Murphy is gone and played well at Duke, I think they got an upgrade at the quarterback position with Darian Mensah, not to mention all the position players they get back. And defensively, they're going to be quite the unit under Manny Diaz. You want to talk about Georgia Tech as an ACC sleeper. Where's the love for Duke? I think the Blue Devils are going to be another solid team like they were last year. So, man, this is going to be a slog for Wake Forest. 3-9 is your record with an 0-8 record in conference play. Look, This is a Wake Forest team that I do think can start getting back towards the top of the ACC, but it is going to take some time for Jake Dicker to implement his system and to be able to adapt this team to his needs. This year, I just don't think it's all going to come together, and they're going to struggle. However, moving forward, we'll see what kind of program Jake Dickert is going to build, and I like his odds here in Winston-Salem down the road. Let me know what you guys think about the Deeks in the comment section below, and remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See y'all in the next video. Goodbye.